Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official audio program of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We take the Starship fame all the way to Southern Ohio to Cincinnati, where we chatted with Vance Meek. Vance is a longtime Bengals fan and occasional contributor for some of the Bengals posts and blogs out there. Vance and we connected over Twitter, and I wanted to get his take on the Bengals and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because if there's any group of fans who can really have a legitimate claim with bias at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I'd say it's Bengals fans. Our regular guest Vinny Lospinoso and we talked about that often, and when I mentioned that to Vance, he was certainly in agreement. So we talked about some of the players who we thought were worthy of consideration from a Bengals point of view, and what Cincinnati fans or the organization really in general could do better to promote some of the great players that they've had. Without further ado, let's bring in Vance. Vance, thank you so much for being on the show. If you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, I am Vance Meek, and if you want to follow on Twitter, that's at Vance Meek on Twitter. Pretty easy to find. I've been a Bengals fan since probably the 1988 Super Bowl team was about when I started following, so I've been around through a few good times, mostly bad, as everybody's pretty aware. Do some writing online at various websites. I've written for Bengals websites, NFL draft websites, so a little bit of a mix of everything. And then I'm pretty available on Twitter most of the time to talk about anything football related.
Nice. One of the things, too, that because I talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame all the time, and generally how some teams' fan base feels that their players are ignored by Canton. Raiders fans, Broncos fans, they tend to be a little bit myopic and feel a little bit paranoid. But I always said that Bengals fans, they're right if they say it.
I would agree. And I know that every team has a player or two that have cases, even teams like the Steelers who have untold amounts of Hall of Famers. They have a few guys, L.C. Greenwood, maybe Donnie Shell. They have a couple guys that should be in that are not. So every team has guys like that. But the Bengals are woefully underrepresented in the Hall of Fame with just Anthony Munoz in as a player. And they have several guys that have strong cases and a couple that are pretty much regarded as why aren't they in the Hall of Fame by almost everybody. So it's pretty interesting to see how this is shaken out and how the Bengals can be. It's pretty fascinating, just to be honest. If you can get over the anger at being so underrepresented, it's kind of fascinating to see how it's played out.
And, you talked sort of like in jest a bit about how the Bengals haven't been necessarily one of the power teams, but this is a team that's been to the Super Bowl twice.
They went to the Super Bowl twice in the 80s. There have been some good times, and people don't know, and we've actually, this has kind of been a little bit of a discussion amongst Bengals fans recently, because John Breach, who is the son of longtime Bengals kicker Jim Breach, wrote an article recently in which he included the fact that many of the NFL's biggest named, I guess you could say, offenses and defenses that have kind of been famous over the years originated in Cincinnati. The no-huddle offense was a Sam Weiss invention in the 80s. The zone blitz defense was started by Dick LeBeau when he was in Cincinnati. Bill Walsh started the West Coast offense in Cincinnati. So these things originated in Cincinnati, but people don't know that because a combination of it's a small market. The Bengals haven't been good for a lot of the years that they've been around, and their own team doesn't really market that kind of thing. So that kind of thing gets lost in the shuffle, and people think zone blitz, that's Pittsburgh. West Coast, that's 49ers. No huddle offense, that's the Bills, and when they were in the Super Bowl. So some of the things that Cincinnati should be known for and should get credit for, they really don't.
Because much more than just the chili.
Yeah, yes, much more than chili.
So there's a few players that I definitely want your opinion on. There's a few that I have a lot of passion about. And just for full disclosure, I'm a Saints fan. I'm a Canadian who's a Saints fan. But I try to keep everything as nonpartisan as possible when it comes to Halls of Fame. But one player specifically who has been a finalist and just never seems to get over the hump, Ken Anderson, or didn't get over the hump, wasn't even part of the 100th anniversary, that extra committee that they put together. Do you think that Ken is the biggest Bengals snub in terms of the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I do. I think most people would agree, and I think most of the NFL fandom in general, including all other teams, even teams that are rival teams, Steelers, Browns, Ravens now, I think most of them are pretty much to the point where, why is it Ken Anderson in? He's just should be in. I don't know what to say. Like, there's not really an argument that I can think of. And when we've had these discussions, or I listen to discussions from other people on podcasts and TV, nobody really has an answer as to why he's not in. It really makes no sense. Like, you can compare him to all the other quarterbacks of his era, and he's at the top or very near the top in performances from all of them. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and there's a lot of quarterbacks are always that sexy position in football that people will go to. Eli Manning, for example, is going to get a lot of press one way or the other when he comes due. Jim Plunkett's another one, but I will maintain, and Raiders fans may not like that, I think the Raiders could have won some of those Super Bowls with a different quarterback. Ken Anderson does not. If he's not there, the Bengals are not in that Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 16.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he could, and it needs to be remembered. He didn't win a Super Bowl. He did go to one. He was also a 4-time Pro Bowler. Maybe he should have had more, but the numbers that he was putting up were crazy for that time. He had a season where he completed over 70% of his passes during a time when nobody completed 70% of their passes or anywhere even close to it. Like, it's some of the things he did were just crazy for when he played.
Yeah, and not only that, one thing that I always sort of like to look at is a monster year. And in 1981, he was every version of the MVP.
Yeah, and took the team to the Super Bowl with, it's an amazing year. Like, one of the best years relative to, again, the time period that he played in. One of the best seasons as a quarterback of all time.
Yeah, and then it's the other thing, too. Like, NFL.com will do their snubs, too, and he always comes up. So it's not like he's not universally regarded, I think, with every football fan, Bengals fan or not, as someone who should be in that conversation for whatever reason. He just doesn't. You're probably, I'm assuming, far more familiar with, because you're following Ken on Twitter and a few other things. Does he openly talk about this? Or I'm sure he's asked every day.
Sure, and he's on Twitter now. For people that may not know, he joined a month or two ago. So, and he's very interactive with fans. He's pretty good about not going into it too. Like, he doesn't get on there and complain or and stuff like that. But it's pretty clear that he thinks that he should be in, and he's right. So you can't really. I can't think of an argument against. I can't think of an argument against him being in, and I really don't know what voters are holding against him. Is it the sheer number of Pro Bowls? Is it the lack of a Super Bowl win? I'm not sure, and I don't know that anybody knows.
I think the only thing they can really point at is the latter, but you're going up against a loaded Niners team led by Joe Montana. There's no shame losing to him.
Yeah, he did. There was, Montana, and then the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls in the late 70s, which got Terry Bradshaw in, even though his numbers are far inferior to Anderson's. So that's the only thing I can think of, is that if he had won the Super Bowl with that early 80s team, then maybe he gets in on the strength of that, but he should still be in.
Mm-hmm. So another player who just passed on, Ken Riley, is one who, if you just look at overall disrespect, the amount of Pro Bowls and All-Pros that he had, considering the amount of interceptions he has, and even with advanced analytics when they're looking back at his career, if there's any player more
disrespectful, that is right now. Sorry to interrupt. He is right with, in my mind, and probably a lot of Bengals fans' minds, especially, right with Ken Anderson as one of the biggest snubs of all NFL players. 65 career interceptions is 5th all time. The rest of the top 8 in interceptions and most of the top 12 to 13 in interceptions are already in. Charles Woodson is right there as well, but he is he'll be in. He's not yet, but he's going to be, leaving Ken Riley really alone. And it's another one that's just kind of inexplicable. He did everything you could possibly do. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL for a long time. So it's another kind of pretty giant snub, and I know that him passing on has raised the sentiment in his favor, so to speak, among Bengals fans who are even more angry that he didn't get in before he passed away. From what my understanding, and I didn't get to talk to him, but I know some people that have met him and talked to him before, and he was, kind of getting into the Hall of Fame was kind of important to him. So it's really sad that he didn't get in before he passed away.
And also, too, like him as one of the great cornerbacks, it's a testament to just his athletic ability because he didn't play that position in college.
No, he was a quarterback in college and moved to a corner in the NFL and transitioned as well as any player has ever transitioned to another position like that coming into the league, especially going from quarterback to cornerback. It doesn't pan out that often, but he certainly did.
No, and did an exceptional job. I think now he probably would have got that shot at quarterback, but it was a different time back then.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. He did everything that you could possibly ask for defensive back and more. There's another player that I think should get a little bit of consideration. Big Willie Anderson.
Yeah, he would have been the next one on my list of players that either should be in or should be getting more looks at being in. Anderson is, in my mind anyway, the preeminent right tackle for his era. He dominated for his, the problem is, and maybe there's a pretty good chance that it's affecting Anderson's candidacy, is that he played on those 90s Bengals teams that were absolutely dreadful. So he didn't play on a lot of winning teams during his career. However, he was excellent when he played. The lack of recognition, the lack of small market, being in Cincinnati on bad teams, I think has probably hurt him, but he certainly did everything you could possibly do as far as putting your talent on display and making a case for being in the Hall of Fame during his career. Multi-time Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro, absolutely dominated as a right tackle in the NFL.
And it's so interesting, too, with that position, just really anyone on the offensive line. There's a lot of offensive linemen represented in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Having said that, there are so many who have been multi-time All-Pros that can't even sniff a semifinalist.
Yes, and I kind of wonder, too, and I'd have to look, and I haven't done the reading, but you might know how many of the tackles that are in the NFL Hall of Fame who were right tackles only as opposed to being left tackles, which obviously gets more recognition. So I don't know if maybe being a right tackle instead of a left tackle affected him, but as far as that goes, he did it better than anybody.
And there's just so many great players at that position. Actually, I had the chance to speak with someone who was a Bengal for a couple years, Richmond Webb, after his Dolphins career ran like member of the Dolphins Ring of Honor, but still never a semifinalist. He's another player. I do remember at my time when I was, because I'm a little bit older, but I do remember his career. He's also very, very good. There's been a few articles online promoting Corey Dillon. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and Corey Dillon is a guy that Bengals fans love, even though he didn't end his career in Cincinnati due to some contract issues and some other things. But if you go look at his numbers, and I didn't even realize it till today when I was kind of doing a little bit of research, but he is 20th all-time in rushing yards. And of the top 20 all-time in rushing yards, only him, Fred Taylor, and Steven Jackson are not in the Hall of Fame as far as players who are eligible for the Hall of Fame. There's a couple still playing, Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore. Everybody else is in. He also stacks up very well in touchdowns. He has 82, I believe, career total touchdowns. So it's not like he just put up a lot of yards and that was it. He was a all-around, effective, at times dominant running back. He has a game where he rushed for 200 and the record at the time, I don't remember the exact number of yards, 280 some yards. So he's in the record books. He has also done as many things as you can do as a running back. He's a multi-time Pro Bowler as well. So it's another one that kind of, again, he also has a Super Bowl on his record as well because he went to New England where he, won a Super Bowl ring. So It's kind of another one that's a little bit inexplicable based on where he ranks among the other all-time greats that just not quite in.
Yeah, and Dillon wasn't a side piece either, too, on that Patriots team. That was, I think, if I remember correctly, his last really good year in the NFL on that Super Bowl run.
Right, yeah, you're right.
Is there any other player that sort of stands out that that you think should get just a little bit more into the conversation?
I think those are the main ones. I made note specifically of Lamarr Paris, who played cornerback as well.
I forgot to bring him
late
up.
70s teams. He was also very good. And the funny thing is, when you're looking at him and Ken Riley was the guy who got all the interceptions. He had 65 career interceptions. He's kind of the more well-known, more remembered among Bengals fans. But Lamarr Paris wasn't a slouch. He had 47 career interceptions, was an 8-time Pro Bowler and 1-time All-Pro. So he certainly has at least a case. He doesn't have quite the interception total, but he was still very good. 47 is not bad. And I don't know if, maybe playing together, maybe that hurt, maybe that split their candidacy and could hurt both of them. I'm not sure on that. And then the other guys that I don't quite think did enough to get in, but I think could have if his career had lasted slightly longer is Chad Johnson / Ocho Cinco. Was easily one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the league during his peak. His career just ended a little earlier than he played. His last big season was, I believe he was 31. He had a down season 32, and then by 33 he was retired. So his career just didn't quite stretch out long enough. But during his peak, he was an absolutely Hall of Fame level player.
I think also, too, he got tainted a bit with that diva moniker, and as we see sort of everything playing out with Antonio Brown, and then prior to him, Terrell Owens, who wasn't exactly the most classy in his 2-year wait to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You're almost guilty by association.
Yeah, and Johnson was such a polarizing player. Like, if you were in Cincinnati, there was nobody that you could possibly have liked more on the team or in the NFL. He was so fun to watch. He was so good, and it kind of gets lost, and maybe it's a disservice to himself that he did, because the things he did as far as making sideline catches, his footwork, his ability to run routes and get open were unmatched. He was not the most talented player coming out. I believe he was a 2nd-round pick. He was not this physically gifted. He's not A.J. Green or Julio Jones or one of these guys that was like a can't-miss player. He worked at his craft harder than anybody, and the things that he could do, he did. Learning how to use his feet, how to get open, catching balls on sideline that he had no business catching. So he was amazing, but I think his antics turned off a lot of people that weren't Bengals fans or were maybe a little bit of the older crowd that was more traditional, wanted their players just to play football and not be involved in the other stuff. So, yeah, I think that certainly would have turned off a lot of people. And when you look at the Hall of Fame voters, especially as he gets older and goes to the senior committee, that's going to be something that would, no matter if his career had gone on longer, may have turned them off, same as Terrell Owens, who you mentioned.
I honestly think that Owens deserved to have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. From what I understand in a lot of the reading that I did, there were so many people who were anti-Owens, almost forcing him to wait, labeling him sort of the bad teammate, which I imagine if you're Jeff Garcia, you'd say so.
Right. Yeah. I don't think there's an argument that he was not at least at times, bad teammate. Maybe not all the time, because you'll find people that say he was a perfectly fine teammate, and he certainly can't question his effort. He played in the Super Bowl with a broken leg.
Absolutely.
Like he certainly went all out, but he was kind of a diva, to use the term that you mentioned, And yes, you're absolutely right. He was certainly a first ballot Hall of Fame player based on numbers, because his numbers are top 3, 4 all time. Like you can't really argue him based on numbers. So he was certainly punished for the off the field stuff.
Now, there's a current Bengal now who I think is making a good Hall of Fame case. And in a previous show, I was joking because we went through all the all-decade selections for the 2010s, and it's Gino Atkins. And we joked that, because he's a Bengal, he needs every accolade he can get.
Sure. And that's part of being, unfortunately, especially with the culture around Cincinnati, with no team-based Ring of Honor or Hall of Fame or whatever name they would want to use. So they don't have a local way of honoring these guys. So that there's a segment that believes that possibly even affects their Hall of Fame candidacy. If their own team won't promote them, then why should the Hall of Fame care?
That's actually Atkins, I want to go there after you're done this. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Atkins, if you just look at the Atkins numbers, his career, the way it played out, absolutely is on just as much of a Hall of Fame trajectory as any other interior pass rusher in the NFL, not named Aaron Donald. And Dalton Sue gets more publicity, or at least he did when they were in their, more towards their primes. Gino Atkins has been a better player. He got, I don't know his exact numbers, but it's something around 80 sacks as an interior pass rusher, has had multiple double-digit sack years. As a guy was a fourth-round pick, he was also another guy that was not, not a first-round pick, first overall pick, or anything like that, like some of these other guys have been. And he just worked that hard and became that good a player. He stacked up, in my opinion, if he plays another year or two and is solid at least, I think he should be a no-doubt Hall of Famer. But we'll see.
Yeah, and so before we get to sort of the honors that you were mentioning, just another player, and I would like to see him sort of make a comeback this coming year, A.J. Green. I think that injury could potentially cost him an all-decade spot.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it could cost him a Hall of Fame berth at this point. Like, he is now, I want to say 31, or he's getting ready to turn 31 before the seasons would start, and his numbers are not. As a Bengals fan, we know we've seen him make the clutch plays, the big plays, and he does. But his numbers aren't. If you just face him, just looking at him, aren't fantastic numbers. He's only had more than 1,100 yards in his career 3 times, and one of those was just 1,200. It was barely. He's not putting up the big numbers, and it's not his fault necessarily, because Andy Dalton was his quarterback for his entire career up until now, and Andy Dalton is not a very good down the field thrower. So a lot of the big plays and explosive plays that guys like Julio Jones and Calvin Johnson and some of those other guys are able to make, he has not had the chance to do, because he has the balls when they are thrown downfield by Dalton tend to flutter out of bounds or just be off track, and so it's limited his big play ability, which has lowered his numbers down. So I think he has some more work to do, and I think you're right. If he can get back and get healthy and play the end of his career out similar to the way Larry Fitzgerald has done in Arizona, they moved him, let him play the slot more, not as many big plays, but tons of catches, lots of touchdowns, then I think he can pad his numbers a little bit and maybe get himself back in the conversation. But as of now, these last 3 to 4 years have really kind of hurt him. He has missed all of last season, and he missed close to half the season the year before that. And then 3 years ago, he missed several games, I want to say 6 games. So the injuries have definitely dulled his star, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up something that I wanted to close off with, and I'm really glad you did. Sort of the lack of recognition that the Bengals as an organization has done for its players' management. One of the things that we also look at Not in Hall of Fame is how each team sort of does that. I know a lot of people hate the Patriots, but they do the Hall of Fame, their franchise Hall of Fame, almost better than anyone. St. Louis Cardinals in baseball, another one. The Bengals only have the one retired number, and I get why they chose Bob Johnson, the first ever Bengal, solid player throughout his year, but Anthony Muno's number is not retired.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's a big discussion as well amongst Bengal fandom. Is the lack of a Ring of Honor type of system, and really, and I don't know if all the other 31 teams do it offhand, but I know most of them do, if not all of them. So it's kind of inexplicable and kind of sad. The Reds have a Hall of Fame museum and system where they do that. So even in the city, it's not like the city of Cincinnati just is like, we don't care. The Reds do it. Mike Brown's just, for whatever reason, doesn't believe that that's necessary and has it throughout history. Now, they did the 50th anniversary of the team a couple years ago, and they did some things, brought players in and honored them on the field, and it was kind of nice. But that's really the extent of his player promotion, in that manner over the entire history of his leadership of the team.
Because I do believe, like you said earlier, like if the franchise doesn't feel it necessary to honor a player who gave that much to the organization, subconsciously in some level, a Pro Football Hall of Fame or a larger institution is going to look at that. I know that when Richard Seymour just got into the Patriots Hall of Fame, there was a lot of Patriots fans who were saying, okay, well, that's the next step for him to get enshrined into Canton.
Yeah, logically that makes sense. As a fan, first of all, as I said, being in Cincinnati, it's a small market team. Not a lot of people know about the history of the team, and a lot of people may not even know who these guys, especially younger generations, probably don't know who Ken Riley is or what Ken Anderson did exactly. Like, they know the name maybe, but they don't really know much about him. That's something that if the team promoted more, then maybe they would. Maybe it'd be a little bit wider recognition around the country as far as, who Ken Riley is. What did he do? Oh, he did have 65 interceptions. He's fifth all-time in interceptions. I didn't know that. The West Coast offense started in Cincinnati with Bill Walsh while he was there. The no huddle, the zone blitz, that would bring recognition to the team, maybe gain them fans even. So it's really kind of heartbreaking on a level that they don't do more of that kind of thing to promote the players that, as you said, gave everything they had to the team while they were there. Well,
it's also free publicity in a way. So, like, if the Bengals are in a national game, and there's always going to be some kind of crowd shots where you would see some of these names, and if you're a younger person, you don't necessarily know who it is. Maybe it's so easy to look that up, or even just call your dad who might be a fan of the team.
Right.
It just, all that stuff gets passed down from generation to generation and fandom to fandom. And when I was talking to Richmond Webb in his time in Cincinnati, he said the fans were fantastic. They
really are. It's underrated. The Bengals fans are very passionate, and that's another thing that kind of gets lost in amongst the bad teams. Obviously, they're not selling out stadiums, and it's kind of I don't want to say necessarily a joke, but it's a point amongst the media when they cover the games. Well, look at this half-empty stadium. So then it makes the fans look like they don't care. And, it's just kind of a trickle effect, really, down the whole way. The team doesn't promote the team. The fans don't show up because the team's not very good because of some questionable decisions and some philosophical issues maybe with the current NFL that maybe they're lagging behind with Mike Brown and things. But it just trickles down, in my opinion, and makes the entire franchise maybe not look as attractive, and maybe that does hurt Hall of Fame candidacy for players through the years.
Because it is funny, because we talk small market, but Cincinnati's not by far the smallest market. It's not the youngest team. It's just one of the, and it also plays in a very high-profile division, with the Steelers and the Ravens. I mean, the games.
Absolutely.
Yeah, games between any of those teams are, you can expect a lot of bruises.
They're always fun games to watch. People, that may not even realize that, but those games are some of the most famous games of all time. Who doesn't know about the playoff game in 2015 when Vontaze Burfict and Adam Jones basically cost the team their first playoff win since the early 90s with the penalties and there's different games with injuries. Carson Palmer getting hurt in 2005 when they were on a essential playoff run. So those games are always extremely contentious. There's always injuries. Andy Dalton's been hurt in Steelers games a couple of times. There's been some very famous hits in those games.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully, and I guess I just want that profile to rise just for the greater good of the National Football League and the Pro Football Hall of Fame in general. I've had the pleasure of going to that hall, loved seeing that, but it always sort of bothered me when you go to the Bengals part and it's sort of small. The Saints part was really small. I mean, I know there's more stuff that they can do. Life didn't begin during the Super Bowl era, of course, but there's still a lot more that could have been. So I just want to close off with, I guess, your personal fandom. Like, what is your favorite moment for in Bengals history, or just a personal thing that you remember, like from attending a game?
I haven't made it to a lot of games. One that I remember a little better, I guess, was a few years ago when they played the Falcons. And that's actually, I guess, several years ago at this point. But they played the Falcons, and the Falcons were really good at the time. But the Bengals beat them pretty soundly. I was there with my dad. I bought tickets. I think it's really kind of the first game that I ever bought tickets for myself. We went and watched, and the Falcons, they I don't know if it was a blowout, but they beat them soundly enough. It was pretty exciting to go watch that with my dad. As far as moments in team history, I'm old enough to remember the '88 Super Bowl run, and it was just that's really kind of my first football memory. I can remember, maybe sitting around watching a little bit before that, but I vividly remember the Super Bowl run. Boomer Esiason, David Fulcher on defense, Chris Collinsworth. I'm just a huge fan of all those guys that were on the team at that time, so that's kind of cemented in my memory.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're around a similar age. I've still busted out the Icky Shuffle once in a while here.
I remember that.
Well, Vance, one last thing, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put you on the spot, if I can.
Sure.
I'm putting together a mock committee for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Would you like to be a part of that?
Sure.
All right. So basically, all you got to do is we're just going to get a bunch of football fans and experts, have a bit of fun, and we're going to act as if we are the actual Pro Football Hall of Fame committee for the 2021 year, and then we're going to make our election.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
All right, beautiful. Thanks so much. This will come up shortly, and I'll let you know via Twitter when that's up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know, and I'll make sure and post it to my Twitter, and we'll try to get as many views as we can.
All right, sounds good. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Look for new content regularly from us at notinhallofame.com, and we hope everyone out there is staying safe. Thanks again.